Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first for our 2 games this week is 2017's Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony, the return to the Battle Royale-like killing game of ultimate talented high school students, where this time, lying in class trials can take you in unexpected directions.
Following that is a return to form for one of gaming's most famous horror franchises, shifting into a first-person perspective and pulling the game back to a small-scope horror experience. 2017's Resident Evil 7, Biohazard.
Yes, continuing the spooky season theming, at least on your end, and I'm kind of contributing this week, I suppose. These are 2017 games, all about twisted murder.
Ooh, there's only 2 more of these. Counting this one. There's 1 more after this. I can't believe how fast this month has gone.
October is zooming so quickly, unlike the rest of 2020, it seems. Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
Well, I played 2 games since last we spoke. First of all, a good game. I played A Short Hike.
Oh, yeah.
It's very short. It's delightful. And it is definitely a game that I already have plans to bring to this show later.
I think it won the most recent, when we talked about like the Sumas McNally Grand Prize at IGF, the Independent Games Festival. I think that was the most recent winner of it.
It's very heartily deserved. It's very short, but it's absolutely just so charming and delightful, and I absolutely recommend it to anybody that enjoys games like that. But then I'm also playing a bad game that I haven't finished yet, because I'm playing Silent Hill 4: The Room. And I am absolutely shocked at how bad it is, and also in the ways that it's bad. Because I love Akira Yamaoka. I love him so much. In Silent Hill 4, there is an enemy called a patient, and when you hit her, the damage sound is just a burp. Like a cartoony burp. And it's not a good game. I'll have more to say about it when I finish it. If I finish it, because boy, it's really testing my patience on that, but it's not a good game.
That's unfortunate, but also you kind of knew that going in, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of the black sheep of the Team Silent Hill games.
Well, let's see. Jackbox Party Pack 7 came out, so I bought it. I haven't gotten around to playing it yet, but that's good. I beat Hades for the first time. Woo! Yay! And I said, you know what? It took me 23 tries. I didn't put on God mode for any of those. I'm going to put on God mode now if I'm going to have to beat Hades 9 more times to roll credits. And so I tried one more time and I died. But just now, before recording, I beat Hades a second time. Yeah! A lot of fun. Really enjoyed it.
Now you understand what I meant when I said the story begins when you beat Hades for the first time.
It sure does. I beat him with the spear the first time, and then I just beat him with the shield. So I'm really, really enjoying that. Having a great time. Looking forward to putting more tries in there.
My first victory was with the fists, which are my favorite weapon in the game.
They're fun. I liked it. But yeah, now that I've put Titan Blood into each of the weapons, that should definitely help going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about some composer follow-up headlines. The composers we talk about on this show, they're still making great things. They're still doing great stuff. Let's talk about some headlines in the video game industry that relate to the games and composers that we've talked about. First of all being Katana Zero. We mentioned that game on the show. It is now available on Xbox Game Pass. Some good Game Pass games available right now. One of them being Tales of Vesperia. I know we didn't talk about Vesperia, we talked about Symphonia, but good Game Pass offerings coming to the service, available now.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Coffee Talk's soundtrack is being released as a limited edition vinyl. It's a green vinyl and then a brown vinyl, so it's matcha and coffee.
Perfect.
It's just neat. I like it when they do stuff like that. It's limited edition, but you can find it. It'll be good. I wish that I could afford it.
I was to say, add it to the list, but at least, the record crackles in the tracks there will at least be authentic now.
Mm-hmm.
Yoko Shimomura's music from the Kingdom Hearts series is highlighted in the rhythm game, Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory. The demo is available now. The game is available, November 13th?
Yes.
But if you'd like to give it a shot, the demo available now. Get used to how weird and different it is for a rhythm game.
I haven't tried it yet, but I have heard some things. Though a good thing that came out of this is the story about why this game happened. Being Shimomura apparently was like, I want to work on a rhythm game. And so she just sort of covertly put some sheet music on the desk of the people behind Theatrhythm. And now this game is happening.
So good. What a boss.
God, I love Yoko Shimomura. She's so good. Meanwhile, River City Girls is releasing on the Microsoft Store on October 27th, and it's very likely that it will also be coming to Game Pass on that day. So that's now 2 more games that we've talked about on this show. Both of the games we talked about in the same episode, actually. I'm just making that connection. Huh. But they're both possibly going on Game Pass this month, so hey, check those out.
Another good beat 'em up to try, maybe, if you're trying to dip your toe into that genre. Like, hopefully, if you picked up Streets of Kamurocho from the 17th through the 19th. I know when this episode releases that just passed, but hopefully you got it free and get to try it. Sounds really cool.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked that that game is happening, but also perfect fit.
100%. Let's talk about our first game this week in a 2017 twisted murder adventure. That is Danganronpa V3, Killing Harmony. Now, we've talked about Danganronpa as a franchise on this show before. In episode 20, I brought Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair to the show. And in that episode, we gave the full detailed rundown of what Danganronpa is. We talked about how the idea that this game, this sequel in 2017 is V3. It's really important, just so you know, because Danganronpa 3 is an anime. It's like closing off the main arcs that the first couple games set up, and then V3 is something different. So now let's talk about the most divisive game in the series for multiple reasons, but also arguably the best game in the series, Danganronpa V3, Killing Harmony, released for PlayStation 4 and Vita on January 12th, 2017 in Japan as New Danganronpa V3, Minna no Koroshiai Shingaki, which translates out to Everyone's New Semester of Mutual Killing. North America would get the game on PS4 and Vita on September 26th, 2017. About 9 months later, and this would be alongside a worldwide PC release. Europe would get the game on PS4 and Vita on September 29th, a few days after America, and then Australia, about a week later, on October 6th. Then the game was included in the Danganronpa Trilogy release on PlayStation 4 on March 26th, 2019. The game is developed by Spike Chunsoft, and it's also published by Spike Chunsoft in Japan, as well as the PC version, but NIS America published the PS4 and Vita version outside of Japan. At its basic core, Danganronpa is a visual novel game that features murder mystery investigations and trials where players need to point out contradictions about the cases. As I've said before, it's easiest to equate it to the core gameplay of the Ace Attorney series, with the plot setup of Hunger Games Battle Royale and the dark theming of the Zero Escape series, lightly splashed with Persona's social links. Really, if you love the Ace Attorney games, this is a new take on those with honestly more vibrant characters and wacky writing and much, much more twisted murder. So the plot of Danganronpa V3 involves high school student Kaede Akamatsu being kidnapped, and she awakens trapped in the ultimate academy for gifted juveniles, where she meets 15 fellow students. The group is abruptly accosted by a series of bear robots known as the Monocubs, who remind the students that they have ultimate talents. For example, Kaede is the ultimate pianist. Monokuma, another robotic bear and the Monocubs' father, the antagonist of the first couple games, then arrives and informs the students that the only way to escape the academy is to successfully murder another student and not be voted as the culprit at the resulting trial. Which student will die first in the killing game? Can Kaede discover the culprit? Who is the mastermind behind everything? And can hope prevail against despair yet again? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony?
I'm ashamed to admit that I have had Danganronpa 1 installed on my computer, I'm pretty sure since before you did Danganronpa 2, and I still haven't played it. Or any of them.
Gotta get on that, man. Honestly.
It's been right there, and I still haven't played it.
I was talking with a friend of ours, and we were gushing about how much we love V3 and the 3 anime and all that. And I was saying, it kills me how, Joe, you haven't played this series yet, because this game in particular is fascinating to talk about in a spoiler context. By the way, hope you enjoyed last week's spoiler warning about her story, if you got around to catching that. Hoping to do that more in the future when the games apply that Joe and I have both played them. But yeah, this game is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And I definitely remember like coming home from work and it's like, all right, this is what I'm doing for the rest of the night. We're playing a chapter of Danganronpa V3. It's a long game. Some thought that was a detriment, but yeah, it's a game that really shines at its beginning and its ending. The middle, it's okay. But wow, it's so fascinating to talk about for a multitude of reasons that won't get into here yet. So let's talk about the development of Danganronpa V3. The idea of the game started when, quote, and also, ... 3 appeared at the end of the reveal trailer for Danganronpa Another Episode Ultra Despair Girls in September 2013. This was a character action third-person shooter spin-off game after the first 2 Danganronpa games. And this was shown at TGS, Tokyo Game Show, in September 2013. Still note that this was still 5 months before the first game in the franchise would be released in North America. The idea of, a Danganronpa 3. And then, series creator and writer Kazutaka Kodaka mentioned at GDC in March 2015 that the next main Danganronpa game was in pre-production. Later, about 6 months later, on September 15th, 2015 at Sony's Tokyo Game Show presentation, Danganronpa V3 was revealed. And it was notable in the sense that it was a PlayStation 4 game as well, because the previous games were either on PSP for their original release or PlayStation Vita as that hardware came out. The key word that I saw thrown around a lot for the theming is psycho cool, which I guess fits, but it's a weird way to describe how your game is, I guess.
Yeah, it's an interesting collection of words.
Yeah, just gonna smash 2 words with a hyphen there together. And when the development team was discussing whether to create a sequel or something totally new for the 3rd installment in the series, Spike Chunsoft decided on both because of how the opinion was so divided in the studio. There is, as I mentioned, a Danganronpa 3 anime that closes out the Hope's Peak Academy saga from the first 2 games. So that's its own Danganronpa 3 kind of thing. While V3 begins a new chapter. And in the PR, they mentioned that V stands for victory. Also, the game features the first female protagonist in the main series. This does not count that Ultimate Despair Girls game because that was the sister of the original main character in that game. But as far as like a main traditional Danganronpa game, female protagonist is pretty notable. As far as the gameplay goes, it's really notable for this game in particular because you can lie in class trials. I had mentioned in Danganronpa 2's episode that the first game was all about finding contradictions in the trials. And then the second game kind of sprinkled the idea that, no, you can agree with certain points of testimony. Well, in this game, there are points where you can lie. And it's so backwards. It's something you don't have to do. But if you do so successfully, you can create shortcuts in the case and see alternate dialogue and all that. The cases still end the same. Let's be real. It's not going to change the story drastically. But it's a different way of approaching the class trials and just kind of thinking them a different way. Found some interesting trivia about the game. This was the first game with a new voice for Monokuma in Japan because the previous voice actor had retired. There was also a demo version, which was a first for the series, that gave the main game players some extra items if they had that demo save file on their system. It needed a high-quality audio DLC patch for free, of course. But on PS4, players discovered that the game was using the compressed Vita audio samples. And it's like, oh yeah, you probably can do better with the larger hard drive on PS4. Also, the game is banned in South Korea after a 17-year-old girl murdered a child there. And people tried to do some digging. The media incorrectly reported and inflated the idea that, oh, she was a member of online role-playing communities, and Danganronpa apparently very popular at the time in South Korea. So they made the wrong connection, and therefore the stigma attached that Danganronpa is responsible for murder in South Korea. So it was at a point where like it could have been appealed and all that, and Sony's just like, nah, we'll cut the losses. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I don't think I can blame him on that one.
It's just a very weird story to come across for sure. The game is reviewed generally well, with a Metacritic score of 81 on PS4 and 80 on Vita and PC. It was the second best reviewed PlayStation Vita game of 2017, behind Hakuoki Kyoto Winds. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one either, but that's the Vita in 2017 for you. The game's visual and audio aesthetics, the character designs and development, the plot twists, and the quality of the main storyline were generally well received by reviewers, and as I said, the first and last chapters especially stand out. Some reviewers found the game to be too similar to its predecessors. Fair. They thought it had too much padding in the middle cases, with just an overall unfavorable length of the game overall. Yeah, also fair. I feel like it was in like the late 30s, early 40s for a visual novel.
Ooh, boy, that's beefy.
And when you think about how Danganronpa 1 and 2 are each about 25, 26, yeah, that's a beefy boy.
That's a lot of time to spend on a visual novel.
Yeah, you're spending a lot of time in the class trials. They're unusually long, for sure. The game sold about 200,000 units in Japan, oddly enough, with about a 2-to-1 split for Vita to PS4. Like, just more copies sold on Vita. Very interesting. And it was estimated that over about 70,000 copies were sold on Steam. Couldn't find any Western information for how the game did over here on PS4 and Vita, but seemed to do pretty well overall, considering it's a Danganronpa game. It wasn't like Persona levels of mass market appeal, and especially in 2017, a wild year for games, which makes sense why it was generally ignored by big award shows then. But it was recognized by some websites here and there. It was nominated for Best Visual Novel by PC Gamer, and it's also nominated for Best Portable Game by Destructoid, where it also won Best Vita Game. Again, Best Vita game in 2017. Congratulations. And it was also nominated for Best Adventure Game and Most Innovative by IGN. It won Best Plot Twist in Game Informer's 2017 Adventure Game of the Year Awards. Fair. Great plot twist in this game for sure. But as far as the legacy of Danganronpa after this game, you have Kazutaka Kodaka directing Death Come True and World's End Club, which both launched this year. So he's busy with other projects. I think he's also involved in an anime now. But with how Danganronpa V3 ends, honestly, who knows if we'll ever see the franchise again. It's one of those things where I miss Danganronpa, but at the same time, I can totally understand if I never see another game of the franchise again. When it comes to the composer for Danganronpa V3, it's all about Masafumi Takada. We've already talked about Masafumi Takada on Danganronpa 2, that episode of Original Soundchat. So we look and we see, oh gosh, is there anybody else associated with the music for this project? And one name stands out, because Takada did all the composition. Like, let's be real here. However, the Japanese version of the game had an ending song for its end credits, sung by Megumi Ogata. So Megumi Ogata will be our musician that we highlight this week. She was born on June 6th, 1965 in Chiyoda, Tokyo, Japan. She is blood type B, and she goes by the alias of M.O., which I gotta spell this to you because it's lowercase E-M colon acute O-U. But I guess M.O. Megumi Ogata. Okay, I guess. But she'd be Ogata Megumi. I don't know. So yes, she's a musician. In this case, a singer. But she is a renowned Japanese voice actress with roles such as Shinji Ikari from Neon Genesis Evangelion, Yugi Moto from Yu-Gi-Oh!, Kurama from Yu Yu Hakusho, Sailor Uranus from Sailor Moon S, Yukito Tsukishiro, or Yue, from Cardcaptor Sakura, and many more. She is the Japanese voice of Ken Amada in the Persona series.
That's unfortunate for her.
But honestly, that checks out and makes sense. She apparently is the original Japanese voice of Lara Croft in 1996's Tomb Raider, and different websites associated her with being X in Mega Man X from 1993. Don't know how that worked out. Most recently, she is the live-action dub voice for the character of Billy Batson, the kid version, in 2019's Shazam, the film that released here, the DC film in North America. Yeah, apparently the live-action dub voice for that character. But most importantly, when it comes to Danganronpa, she is the voice of Makoto Naegi and Nagito Komaeda, probably two of the more recognizable characters in the series. Makoto Naegi is the protagonist of the first game, and Nagito is Nagito in Danganronpa 2.
Tumblr's favorite character.
Absolutely. So she is the voice of those two characters, and generally why she is the singer when it comes to if Danganronpa needs an opening theme or a closing theme, or the anime needs an OP song or an ED. Like, she's the singer when it comes to these themes for the Danganronpa series. She attended Tokai University, but apparently left due to a lack of interest. And because of her husky voice, she is often typecast as either young men and boys or tomboyish females. It is also because of this that she is sometimes referred to as Aniki by fans, which if you don't watch anime or know Japanese, is generally a term referring to Big Brother. But she was the voice actor of the year from Anime Grand Prix in 1994. So, a notable voice actress for sure. When it comes to being a singer, she's released her own personal music CDs. But like I said, in this case with Danganronpa, it's all about the opening and ending themes here. And I don't think she necessarily did any really music for other games. It was more like voice acting. Like she was a couple characters, and we mentioned Tales of Vesperia. She was a couple characters there, but not necessarily music per se. But yes, when it comes to Danganronpa V3's soundtrack, really, Masafumi Takada is the main composer. Ogata sings that Japanese-only ending theme called Dan Kusari Break, or translations out to Decision Chain Break. Outside of Japan, the ending credits are really covered by an instrumental remix of in-game tracks, which is called The End of DNG. We've mentioned before on the show how this game notably features a performance of Clair de Lune by Claude Debussy, which is quote-unquote played by Kaede as the ultimate pianist. We mentioned this in our Coffee Talk episode. Apparently, Masafumi Takada also uses Clair de Lune on a couple of his other soundtracks, specifically for The Evil Within and Flower, Sun, and Rain. So yeah, we won't talk about Clair de Lune on the Critical 5, but let's just say it's a really important piece, and we aren't ready for that conversation yet. Overall, there are 109 tracks on the soundtrack, which was released across 5 discs on different black and white versions of the original soundtrack. These were released through Masafumi Takada's music label, Sound Prestige Records. The soundtrack is also available digitally. Yes, Danganronpa is a weird electronic soundtrack, but it sounds so good and it's perfect for its theming. Let's get to the 5 critical tracks, and we have to start with maybe the weirdest track of all. It's Rise and Shine, Ursine.
1, 2, 1, 2. E is all that remains of a once powerful note. Right now, you're on the threshold of an amazing adventure. Showtime.
So early on in the game, you meet these characters called the Monocubs, and there are 5 little robotic bears that each have their own different outlandish personality. And this is their theme. So you become very familiar with this theme, especially early on in the game, and it's so different with its low, deep, robotic, processed voice.
Yeah, it's super weird, but also I get a Jet Set Radio vibe from it a little bit because of the voice.
Sure, I feel like it may be a little too chill to be like, grinding with rollerblades and all that, but the weird sampling that definitely makes me think of that for sure. That's a good point. But yeah, wow, it's a song that will get stuck in your head early. It was the first song I immediately had to put down on the Critical 5 from this game because it just stands out. And there's nothing else like it, I think, on the soundtrack or in game music for all that matter. When counting 1 and 2 sound different, and then reading like a passage, he is all that remains of a once powerful nation. It's like, oh my gosh. What is this track for little robotic bears?
Weirdly enough, this is slightly similar to a track we'll talk about next week.
Okay.
Like, kind of bizarrely, only slightly though.
I look forward to it because I am all about this. The next one I had to throw down here on the Critical 5 is number 2 here. This is Beautiful Lie. We've talked about in the past how Danganronpa is split into 2 halves, essentially. You have the daily life, where the story is progressing, you're interacting with the people on the island, you get to make friends with the people on the island, all is good. Nobody has been murdered. Somebody is murdered. And the game shifts into deadly life, where you're investigating crime scenes and you're going to the class trial. Well, Beautiful Lie is the main theme when you've woken up. It's a new morning, it's the daily life, and you're exploring your surroundings here in this academy. So it's just a great theme, and definitely one where it's like you're kind of rooted, like starting a new day. Everything seems positive and happy, but there is that, kind of twinge of like something is impending, may not be right. So a perfectly titled, beautiful lie.
Yeah, this song's got a really good groove to it, and I dig it a lot.
I don't know if it has as good of a groove, though, as number 3 on the Critical 5. This is Despair Searching. All right, so someone has been murdered. And so you need to do some investigation around the academy. It's some crime scene investigation time, and you need a good music theme to go with it, if any indication has been made from previous Danganronpa games. And boy, do you get this track. Taking the clip from the middle of the piece just to get more of the sense of like with the trumpets coming in and whatnot, just to mix it up. But oh man, when this track kicks in, it's so good. Also difficult to leave off, there's a track called Hope Searching on the soundtrack. And it's basically a riff off of this, but when you get deeper into the game and the stakes are higher, it adds electric guitars to the mix. I like the vibe of this one a lot more, which is why I put this one here. It's just like Kill Command from Danganronpa 2, where it's like, it's the end of the game, it's adding the crazy electric guitars in there. But no, this is like the foundation of crime scene investigation. And boy, does it have just, as you said, it's a groove to it for sure.
The trumpets sort of give it a noir feeling almost.
Yes.
Like
yes.
that's kind of what I get. So that being an investigation song, that fits perfectly. That's very fitting. But I half expect somebody to be narrating their own life in a gruff voice while hearing this song.
He is all that remains of a once powerful nation. Oh boy. Number 4 on the Critical 5. Let's up those stakes quite a bit. This is Class Trial Resurrection Edition. See, now we're in the class trial, and there's been a breakthrough in the case. Now we're getting somewhere, so to speak. Gotta press on a suspect here. I feel like this is this game's equivalent of an Ace Attorney Pursuit theme. It certainly has the energy to it. Granted, Danganronpa and its soundtracks really amp up the synths here, the electronic sounds, compared to like the midis of an Ace Attorney game. But wow, I mean, when this song gets going, and it has a whole other version on the soundtrack where there's a version with an intro and without an intro, so you can get like some build up to it, with the developments in the case. Oh, but yeah, once this plays, things are moving, things are happening. Pay attention.
I think this is a close second for my favorite song on this Critical 5. Personally, my favorite is actually Critical Track number 5, weirdly enough. But comparing it to the Pursuit theme is definitely high praise, or to a Pursuit theme. I don't know why I said is definitely high praise, and I absolutely get that vibe. Yeah, it's very, very good.
Let's get to that number 5 then on the Critical 5, rounding things out. I feel like if there's one song in this game that people point to as like, yeah, this song is hype, it's V3 Argument, Scrum. The drop to end all drops. Honestly, the build in this song is so long because let's explain what's happening here. There's a section of the game in class trials called Debate Scrum, and it's when the class is divided down the middle on a key argumentative issue of the case. Half the class is on one side, half the class is on the other side, and so you're playing on one of those sides. And so like the whole classroom is changing, and this is all this build up. The build up is going, ramping it up. And then the drop happens, and like you're in a showdown and like have to find keywords that counteract. Just it's a back and forth that's really, they're cool moments of the cases, honestly, but they're usually like the big tipping points. Especially when it hinges on this moment. But this rave music that goes with it after that huge drop, it really sticks with a lot of people. And I think that's why definitely people point out, it's like, oh yeah, the debate scrum music, the scrum music. Yes, definitely the shine standout piece.
It's bizarre to me that it's called Scrum because Scrum is actually like a game development methodology that's usually attached to Agile. I had to learn about it in college, so that's the first place my brain goes.
Scrum is also the name of all the press that are swarming the people after a press conference. That's a scrum.
I'm learning many new uses for that word. What a weird word. But no, like I said, this is my favorite song in this Critical 5. This song is awesome. Like really, really, really good. And it's just sort of, it's intense. It's in your face. It's these really cool synths. And like you said, it's fantastic drop. And yeah, this song rules. I love it.
I just can't wait for you to experience it in the game. Such a good moment. Those scrums, really the turning points of the cases. Let's talk about a couple tracks on the cutting room floor on a much lighter note. Here's a track called Become Friends. This is certainly a much lighter piece because we're back in the daily life and everything's fine. Nobody has been murdered for now. And you get the chance, like Persona, to build social links to talk to one of your friends on the island and deepen your relationship with them and get to learn a little bit more about them. And this is the happy music that plays when you're interacting. Everything is good. Don't worry about all the terrible things going on. It's just music that sticks with you as you're trying to learn more about all these different characters, and it's a nice change of pace from all the heavy synths going on in this game.
Something about the instrumentation, though, just I hear this and I'm like, oh yeah, that's from a visual novel.
Yes. Oh gosh.
I don't know what it is about those instruments, but it just sounds like this is a visual novel song.
And if anything, yeah, like these sections of the games, like it's trying to be a little tropey, play off some of like the different character tropes and all that. It's like, or what you generally do in a visual novel before you get back to the investigating a murder stuff. The second track on the cutting room floor, though, is My Revenge from last week. This is Let's Start the Killing Game. A deeply unpleasant song to listen to, just like your track from Detention last week, but also one of the best songs in Danganronpa as a franchise.
It sure is a song. It's, yeah. You almost said the next track on the Killing Room floor, which honestly, I think you should have rolled with that one. But like, yeah, okay. I was wondering because I read you saying that on the outline and I didn't quite know what you meant. All right.
So this piece is really, really good because when we talk about like the Danganronpa 3 anime, this piece gets a lot of highlight there, actually, representing a song that will drive people to murder each other. Like, this is the song in the world of Danganronpa that will drive you to madness. So, kind of amazing, actually. Can't remember exactly where it is in the V3 game, but it's on the soundtrack. So it's cutting room floor at best, let's be honest. But it's such a great piece in the franchise. If we're going to talk about it ever, I had to talk about it here.
It's goofy, and I respect that.
It's also, like you said last week, one for me. What will I never forget about this game? Oh boy, at the end of chapter 1. So this game coming out in 2017 was also part of the whole you can't stream past a certain point of this game controversy like there was with Persona 5. But I feel like there was maybe a slight justification for this because the end of chapter 1 is an all-timer. That is an all-time twist in my perspective. And then when you get to the end of the game, there's a reason why players and fans of Danganronpa aren't sure if there's ever going to be Danganronpa ever again. But the end sure makes you think, and it's very divisive. And those are the main things that stand out. I mean, a couple characters come to mind. Maki is best girl, in case you're wondering, in this game. But yeah, I really love this game. It's going to be one where I eventually want to play it again. Maybe if I'm showing someone Danganronpa, but that may take a bit. Danganronpa's a weird series. But if you love Ace Attorney, the colorful characters in a series like Persona, man, you owe it to yourself to play it for sure.
One day I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I keep telling myself that, but I'm too busy playing bad games like Silent Hill 4.
What is wrong with you?
That's a good question, and I don't have an answer for you.
No, honestly, it's probably up there at the top of like the series I recommend you play. I think you'll love it. I'm just saying. So to transition to our next game, let's talk about a fan cover, whether it's from OC Remix, YouTube, wherever people get to cover tracks from this game. Found a YouTuber called Vetrom who tried his hand at the Scrum piece. He used the kind of loose English translation of Discussion Scrum as the title, and he really just amps up the EDM a little bit more, and it just sounds so good. So please enjoy the rave nature of this track, and we'll be right back.
So let's jump into a more scary game, but still plenty of murder going on. Like, just so much murder. We're going to talk about Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, which was originally released for the PlayStation 4, PC, and Xbox One on January 24th, 2017, which would make it one of the major opening acts to what we have said in the past was a hell of a year. In fact, Resident Evil 7 came out on the same day as Yakuza 0 in the West.
I did not know that.
Yep, same day. I remember buying both of them. I remember pre-ordering and buying both of them. Well, maybe not pre-ordering. I don't think I've pre-ordered a game in a while, except for Mario. But like, I remember those games coming out like at the same time because that was an expensive week. A cloud version of the game would release on Nintendo Switch in Japan only on May 24th, 2018.
That's right.
So that's a really weird way to do that. It will also be part of the PS Plus collection when PS5 launches. That's seemingly Sony's answer to the Xbox Game Pass. It was developed and published by Capcom. The title is already kind of interesting off the bat. If you don't know, in Japan, it's not called Resident Evil. The series was called Biohazard. So the game being called Resident Evil 7 Biohazard is a weirdly big deal. More so that in Japan, the game is called Biohazard 7 Resident Evil.
Yes, good.
So it's the first time that the two titles have kind of combined, I guess, in both of those regions. It's just a neat little factoid. We've yet to talk about a game in the Resident Evil series, which is kind of weird because alongside Silent Hill, it's like one of the big survival horror franchises in video games. Like it's the one. In fact, the original Resident Evil, which released on the PlayStation in 1996, essentially wrote the book on the genre. Like, in the same way that Mario 64 wrote the book on how to make 3D platformers, or we've talked about in the past, Parappa the Rapper did for rhythm games. Games like Resident Evil just sort of didn't exist before Resident Evil came out. So, it's a big deal. It's a big deal franchise. It is one of Capcom's flagship IPs. That original game was super successful. It spawned tons of sequels and spin-offs. George Romero actually believes that the game itself, like, revitalized interest in zombie fiction in 96. Like, that's insane. But as the series progressed, it kind of started to go further and further in an action direction as opposed to horror. And this kind of came to a head with Resident Evil 6 in 2012, which was a game received so monumentally poorly that fans actually regularly hope that it gets retconned completely out of canon. Resident Evil 6 is apparently a very, very bad game.
Also, a terrible logo design.
One of the worst logo designs, actually. Like, oh man, it's so bad. But the thing is that Resident Evil 6 drops the pretense of trying to be a horror game at all. It's action. It's an action game. And the story has ballooned to where it's like an international plot, and it's so weird. So, Resident Evil 7 is sort of seen as a soft reboot of the series in some ways. Like, it's still canon with all those others, which is super weird, but it's a reboot in the sense that it features a brand new protagonist. Also takes the focus away from action and puts it back into horror and exploration, but it also, for the first time in the Resident Evil series, where most of the Resident Evil games are either like fixed camera angles, cinematic stuff, or third person over the shoulder, Resident Evil 7 is first person, which was a big deal when it came out, honestly.
And I guess Shinji Mikami is doing interviews right now. There's like some documentary. I saw an article today where it's like he was talking about how he was the director of the original Resident Evil, and he wanted that original game to be first person. So in a way, it almost feels like, yeah, grounding the series back to what it could have been, or like they wanted it to be, but now the technology allows for it.
Yeah, it's just a really neat shift, I think. You play as Ethan Winters, who receives a message from his wife Mia, who herself has been missing and presumed dead for the past 3 years. What starts as a loving video message about her babysitting job ends with a visibly scared Mia in a dark room, warning that, whatever he did, Ethan should not look for her. So, of course, in typical horror protagonist fashion, Ethan goes looking for her. And that search leads him to a seemingly abandoned plantation in Dulvey, Louisiana. He finds Mia being held captive in a basement, but as they try to make their escape, Mia turns violent and attacks Ethan, forcing him to seemingly kill her. Before Ethan can leave, he's attacked by a man and knocked unconscious with, in my opinion, one of the best deliveries in the game, the "Welcome to the family, son." And from there, Ethan finds himself a captive of the insane Baker family. It's made up of Jack, who is the father, Marguerite, the mother, Lucas, the son, and an old catatonic lady who is not actually named. After escaping, he must explore the Baker estate with some guidance from Zoe, the seemingly still sane daughter, all while being pursued by various members of the Baker family. Can Ethan and Mia escape the Baker estate alive? What caused this seemingly normal family to succumb to madness? And why does Jack appear to be immortal? Those are the questions that will haunt you in Resident Evil 7, and here is where I will ask, Peter, what are our experiences with Resident Evil 7?
I own the gold version of the game, so it has all the DLC and whatnot on it. And I got it because I got a PlayStation VR unit around Christmas of, was it 2018? Yes, Christmas 2018. And so, like, one of the best games you can get on the platform, Resident Evil 7. But also, I'm not huge on horror games, so I'm like, all right, I'll at least give it a shot out of VR just to see how I like it. And I got to the first big boss fight, and I noped out of that. I'm like, I can't beat him. Maybe I'll look it up some other time. And it's a game I've been meaning to go back to. Maybe do I feel brave enough to put on the VR headset? Ooh, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, it's a game I've always meant to get back to. And maybe we'll see when next generation rolls around. You know, help some performance, loading times. I don't know. Possible.
I played it at launch, and it was the first Resident Evil game I ever finished, like ever beat. And honestly, it's the first Resident Evil game I ever played. I have never finished Resident Evil 4. Now I have done like the remakes of 2 and 3, obviously. 4 is on my list to play at some point. And the first one I absolutely need to get to, but 7 is pretty much the only like mainline game that I have finished, and I think it is great. I wouldn't count it among my favorite horror games, but like, I like a lot of things about it. I like Jack a lot. Jack Baker is so much fun. I don't know, it being in first person is a little weird, but it works well. I've never played it in VR because I don't have access to VR, and honestly, some things in that game I don't want to see in VR.
That's quite the intro to that game. Ooh.
One of these days, maybe I'll give it a shot in VR if I ever get a hold of a PSVR system. But yeah, it's a very good game, and I dig Resident Evil 7. I found some neat stuff while researching this game, so let's jump right into it. Prototyping for Resident Evil 7 began in 2013, pretty much right after 6 was released. The first version of the game was once again leaning more towards the action angle that 6 had been so criticized for. So, at first, they hadn't learned their lesson yet. Don't understand. The idea to scale the game back to taking place in one isolated location was apparently inspired by the 1981 Sam Raimi film The Evil Dead. And honestly, considering the setting, I could sort of see that. The move to first person was an idea meant to heighten players' immersion into the world, and the team wanted to get back to the series' roots of being a horror game. I guess then they did learn their lesson eventually. Maybe they read reviews of Resident Evil 6, I don't know. At least they saw the light. The game began full development in February of 2014, where a brand new custom engine was built for it called the RE engine.
Oh, the best thing Capcom has done in recent years. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, one of the main features of the RE engine was its built-in VR development tools. But VR was not a focus from the start. You'd think, like, the move to first person, and it's built into the engine. They must have been planning it from the start. They were not. VR did not become a focus for RE7 until October of 2015, when a secondary team was assigned just to the game's VR functionality. And simultaneously building the game to work in VR required the team to use more detailed textures as well as ensure objects in the environment were the correct size, because otherwise you get motion sickness and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And this added quite a bit of workload to development, apparently. Resident Evil 7 is also the first game in the franchise to have a Westerner at the helm as narrative designer, being Richard Piercy, who had previously worked on the Fear franchise, as well as he served as one of the narrative designers on Spec Ops: The Line. There were many rumors upon the game's announcement that Capcom had looked to PT for inspiration. That was the playable teaser for the upcoming and now canceled Silent Hills. And those rumors even ballooned into the idea that Capcom had poached some of the team who had originally worked on PT. Capcom dispelled these rumors by pointing out that RE7 had begun development before PT had been released, and so, no, it was not they say it was not an inspiration at all.
It's good that they clarified that, but it's also fair to see similarities between the two.
Oh yeah, especially for a thing we'll get to in a second. While designing creatures for the game, a team of makeup artists built physical models of them, sometimes out of real meat, which would then be scanned in for the use of the 3D modeling team. They actually recently talked about using this method again for Resident Evil 3's Nemesis. Like, they built a life-size Nemesis out of meat and stuff. And it's really weird that they did that, but it works, I guess. So then at E3 2015, before the game had been announced, Capcom brought a VR demo titled Kitchen, where the T in the word is a 7, running on the RE engine. While its connection to Resident Evil was not revealed at the time, the 7 in the title was meant to be a hint, apparently. Nobody noticed.
I always thought it was just Kitchen and never even saw the 7. Let's be real.
The game was officially announced in June of 2016 with a playable teaser called Resident Evil 7 Teaser Beginning Hour, releasing shortly after. The demo was filled with puzzles and hints, with more being added through updates as the game got closer to release. Like, it was actually really cool, I think. That was such a neat demo, and I don't remember if anybody ever found out what the dummy finger was for. Capcom also revealed that this demo was a standalone part of the story and not just a section cut out from the game, though I'm pretty sure you can actually find a tape that lets you play the demo in-game.
It was one of the best trailers at E3 2016, though, let's be honest. An incredible reveal, especially when people put it together throughout the trailer and then it hits at the title splash. The end is so good.
Yeah, that very, very good reveal.
And then to say, out in January 2017, demo out tonight, like, oh, amazing, amazing.
I remember, like, immediately downloading that demo and playing it, like, instantly. And I think I played it about 3 times in the dark in an empty house, which is both the best and worst way to experience that. Another playable demo was made available at Gamescom 2016. This one put players in control of Mia as she attempts to escape Marguerite Baker. This demo, I know for a fact, or at least some version of it, can actually be found and played as one of the in-game found footage tapes in Resident Evil 7. So that's kind of neat. I didn't realize that was a demo from a show. Resident Evil 7 was reviewed favorably upon release with a Metacritic score of 86. Many critics pointed to the game's pacing and atmosphere as its biggest strength, and the game was also praised for bringing the focus back to horror as opposed to action, because, oh, would you look at that? It turns out that's what people wanted from Resident Evil. It was also praised as one of the first major full-length releases to be fully playable in VR. That was a big deal when it came out.
Sure was.
It won a good amount of awards, honestly, and was nominated for a ton of others, but keep in mind that, as we've said before, 2017 was a really, really good year for video games. It had some really steep competition all around, though most of the awards it did win were directly related to its VR functionality, which definitely gave it a leg up in comparison to some of its competition that year. The awards that it won were Best VR Game at the Golden Joystick Awards, Best VR/AR Game at the Game Awards, the Coney Island Dreamland Award for Best Virtual Reality Game at the New York Game Awards, Control Design VR, Sound Effects, Sound Mixing and Virtual Reality, and Use of Sound Franchise at the Navigator Awards, VR Game of the Year at the South by Southwest Gaming Awards, Best VR Audio at the Gang Awards, and the Excellence Prize from Famitsu in their Game of the Year Awards. So it won a good amount of awards, but none of the big heavy hitter categories, because there was a lot that came out that year. A lot of really good stuff. That was Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey and Nier Automata and Yakuza 0 and Persona 5. 2017 was an insane year. So 2 mini DLC packs called Banned Footage, Volumes 1 and 2, were released in the following months, both featuring short playable scenes to add context to certain things in the story. They're nothing to write home about, honestly. They're just sort of there. I personally kind of regret buying them, but whatever. 2 story DLCs were released at the end of 2017. Not a Hero, a campaign where players were put in control of series veteran Chris Redfield. This campaign is largely considered not very good. And End of Zoe, which put players in control of Jack's brother as he learns what happened to his extended family. This one is considered dumb, but serviceable. The RE engine, like you said, has become Capcom's big engine now, having built 2 more Resident Evil games on it, being the remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3. Devil May Cry 5 was built on the RE engine. The upcoming Monster Hunter Rise for the Switch is also being built on RE engine. It's a really versatile engine, apparently, and it works crazy well, to be perfectly honest.
It does so well with faces and shaders there.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of figured that it just didn't work on Switch because none of the RE Engine games had come to Switch. But like I said, Monster Hunter Rise, it's a Switch exclusive. It's being built on RE Engine. That's the first RE Engine game to be actually running on a Switch. A direct sequel to RE7 releases next year, titled Resident Evil Village. Capcom says that it's not Resident Evil 8, despite the logo putting an emphasis on the VIII, but it's not Resident Evil 8, it's Resident Evil Village, and shut up, Capcom. This game will once again put players in control of Ethan, and it will also be in a first-person perspective. Capcom's sort of doing this weird thing with Resident Evil right now, where they're having one team work on mainline games, and then another team is like, all right, we're just going to follow in their footsteps and remake every Resident Evil game. Because they're working on 4 right now, apparently, even though that one is the least in need of a remake of all of them. But whatever, who am I to judge? So, the lead composer on Resident Evil 7 is Akiyuki Morimoto. He began working for Capcom's sound team sometime in 2008, and that's literally all the information I can find. A first for this is that the wiki article itself said little else is known about him. I've never seen an article straight up just say, we don't know anything else. This is all you get. In terms of discography, he started his career at Capcom doing 1 track for Monster Hunter 3 called Hunter of the Violent Sands, and then he did 1 track for the game Lost Planet 2 called Vagabundo, and then he was one of the lead composers for Resident Evil 6, and then one of the lead composers for Resident Evil 7. I assume he is probably working on Village. And he also did an official arrangement of the Pileman stage theme from Mega Man 11 for that game's official soundtrack release. In terms of Resident Evil 7 itself, the main score was actually done by Akiyuki Morimoto, Miwako Chinone, and Satoshi Hori. There were also additional contributions by Chris Velasco and Brian D'Oliveira. So, let's jump into the soundtrack of the game, and probably one of my favorite factoids I've ever discovered for this show, ever. And that's saying something, because we found some really cool stuff. We'll start with critical track number 1, the main theme of the game, Go Tell Aunt Rhody. Like I said, this is the main theme of Resident Evil 7. It is an arrangement of a 19th century American folk song, arranged by Michael A. Levine, vocals by Jordan Rain, with backup vocals by Mariana Barreto. One of the things I found about this artist, you might not know the name Michael A. Levine, but you have heard a song that he composed, because he is apparently the man behind the famous Kit Kat Gimme a Break jingle from 1988. Like, what?
Applesauce. Football cream. Fancy feast.
It's just, if you don't know the Kit Kat jingle, which I don't believe you if you say that.
I mean, like, okay, there may be viewers outside of the United States. I mean, it may have not reached it. I don't know.
That's true. But if you live in America and you don't know the Kit Kat jingle, I don't believe you. I don't believe you, because it's one of the most famous jingles of all time.
I mean, give me a break.
Give me a break of that Kit Kat bar. Break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. Like, come on. Anyways, according to Levine, Capcom wanted an arrangement of a song that, quote, people already knew the world over, but they wanted it to be a traditional song, not a pop song. So he picked Go Tell Aunt Rhody because it's a song that actually has a Japanese equivalent. He explained that because American teachers had gone over to help establish Japan's education system in the 1870s, one of the songs they brought over was Go Tell Aunt Rhody, which in Japan is called Musunde, and apparently most people in Japan actually believe it's a traditional Japanese song. It's so big in their culture there. The original lyrics of the song are, Go tell Aunt Rhody the old gray goose is dead. But in order to more fit with the game's horror themes, this line was changed to Go tell Aunt Rhody that everybody's dead. Because cheerful folk songs. Levine says Capcom requested about 20 different versions before all was said and done, with them telling him over and over to, quote, make it even scarier. When asked what kind of notes Capcom gave him, that was his only answer. He repeated it 3 times. Barreto was originally the lead singer, but her voice had a more innocent quality, and Capcom wanted somebody who felt more, quote, invasive, so Barreto was moved to background vocals, and Jordan Rain became the lead vocalist. This is a really cool song.
Oh, yes.
It's such a neat, like, opening piece. 'Cause, like, this game takes place, like, out in a isolated Louisiana plantation. And so making it be like a folk song that probably came from that part of the country, it fits really well, and it's just a really good arrangement, and I totally dig this song.
It's the one song I knew from the game. It's the one song, if you're familiar with the trailers and all of that, it's the song from the game. Absolutely.
I remember being very excited that a full version came with the soundtrack, because sometimes songs like this are in trailers and then they're just not part of the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, good on Capcom for that one. Critical track number 2. Let's talk about that boss fight that stopped you in your tracks, because let's talk about Garage. This song was composed by Miwako Shinone. This is the theme for the first boss in Resident Evil 7. Well, the second boss in Resident Evil 7, I guess. Which is the fight in the garage with Jack. You try to go out in the garage and warn a cop that, hey, we gotta go, like, right now. And then Jack kills that cop in front of you and then goes for you. It's the best boss fight in the game. Unfortunately, they're never quite as good as this one. Up to this point, you've been running from Jack throughout the small starting area of the house. But then the game's like, no, you fight him now. This is a small area. You fight him now. So it comes with this really stressful, chaotic piece that really makes Jack feel super threatening, because he is. And like, this boss can be a lot to deal with, and this piece really sort of reflects that. So if you do go back, let me give you a piece of advice. You can get in the car before Jack does.
I didn't even get to the garage.
Oh, wait, was it Mia that stopped you?
No, it was Jack busting through the walls, and I tried to fight him with the gun, and I guess I didn't just run away. Oh man, I'm dumb.
Yeah, it's a fight in the garage. So at some point, Ethan's car is in the garage.
Okay.
And you can find his keys on a workbench near the back of the garage. And if you pick up the keys and get in the car, then the fight goes drastically differently and is also a lot easier. But if you don't do that, then Jack gets in the car. And then Jack is driving the car. And that's not a fun position to be in. It's such a good boss fight. It's one of the most memorable parts of the game by far. And just this piece is so good. It's got some really interesting percussion, and it just feels chaotic, because Jack brings a lot of chaotic energy to the game, and I love it.
It definitely reminds me of the stress that I had when it comes to Jack. And yeah, Jack was Mr. X busting through walls before RA2 became HD, so...
Yeah, for the whole first area of the game, he is actually stalking around the area and will chase you if he finds you.
It's just stressful because you spend so much time, or at least I did. I did a lot of looking around that house, but like, you're just exploring a lot, and then it's like, oh, suddenly the pressure, and he'll mess you up.
Well, like walking through that hallway and then just bam, he comes busting through that wall.
And your gun does nothing. Like,
the gun does nothing. So yeah, there's my piece of advice. Don't fight Jack when he's in stalking mode. It ain't worth it. Critical track number 3. Let's bring the tone down a little bit and talk about Safe Room. This song was also composed by Miwako Shinone. She did a lot of stuff that I ended up really gravitating towards, and I kind of wish I'd looked into her instead, though probably if I couldn't find anything about the lead composer of this game, chances are I probably wasn't going to find anything about her either. But Resident Evil has a tradition of having really good save room music. Because in every Resident Evil game, well, in most of the Resident Evil games, when you walk into a save room, you cannot be followed by monsters. Nothing can follow you in there. And that includes Jack. Jack cannot follow you. And so it's always like this very calm song. And I think this one is calming. And I saw a YouTube comment actually describe it as eerie yet calming, which I think is a very fitting description. It brings across like this sense of safety because you're in a safe room. Nothing can hurt you right now. But also it's a reminder that you have to leave the room eventually. You can't just hang out in there forever. But I think that distorted banjo, I think it's a banjo. I'm pretty sure it's a banjo. It might be a guitar. I might be insane, but I'm pretty sure it's a banjo. But it really brings out that like creepy bayou energy. Because remember, this game takes place in the bayou, and the bayou is a creepy place.
Somebody listened to the soundtrack for The Last of Us. Somebody got inspiration by Gustavo Santaolalla.
I could absolutely hear that 100%. I think you are probably spot on. I mean, big Sony money thing.
Sure.
They probably had connections to Naughty Dog in some way.
Well, also, I'm sure like the industry at large did not ignore The Last of Us.
That's also true. Yeah, it's I could definitely hear that. Though I think this song leans a bit more into the backwoods sort of feeling. But yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. I think you're correct. Then let's just take it back up, I guess, with critical track number 4, Keeper of the Greenhouse 2. This song was composed by Satoshi Hori. I think it is the Marguerite chase theme. I'm pretty sure it is the song that plays when Marguerite is chasing you in her area of the game. Because while Jack's thing is that he's incredibly strong, I mean, we were just talking about him busting through a wall with his fist. Marguerite's not really strong. Her thing is bugs. Lots of bugs. Bugs everywhere. So this song, I think, really brings across an effective sort of creepy crawly vibe in that sense. Like with the like sort of falling violin melody and all that. Like, I think it's really, really good. It's got some chaotic, like, muted violins in there. It's got a hectic piano. Really intense drums. I think the whole thing just sort of really comes together to make this very stressful piece where you can just feel the bugs, and I don't like it.
Yeah, but at the same time, you gotta respect and admire, as you played violin. But yeah, it's amazing how just that, yeah, like, however they get to like, move the bow across the strings really quickly while sliding the finger down, like, it really just, that's that horror sound. It's that bug-like creepy crawly sound. It's amazing how often that is used in these kind of settings, but also just how effective it is.
Yeah, it's such, like I said, listening to this song is kind of unpleasant, but it's supposed to be, and it's just very effective. And definitely brings why Marguerite is scary directly into the forefront. Like, it reflects her perfectly. And finally, critical track number 5, let's talk about Determination. once again composed by Miwako Chinone. I think this is the build-up to the final encounter with the thing that caused the plot to happen. It's just this kind of epic piece that just sort of builds and builds to this sense of finality. It's this neat little piano stings, and it kind of definitely feels like you're on your way to a climactic encounter, and you're on your way to, go see where this all started and make it end already.
You love piano pieces, right?
I don't know what would give you that idea. Yeah, this is, that's one of the main reasons, but just, it's just such an epic, cool piece. I really like it.
Yeah, a very effective use of those pianos. Yeah, no Undertale references here, but wow, yeah, that's a nice piece for it. You're right. Finality, just the intensity of the showdown. Yeah, that's a good one.
So, for tracks on the cutting room floor, first one is Love to Death. Here we go. We finally got one. This one's by Akiyuki Morimoto.
Yay!
You got one. I was starting to get real worried while doing research for this. This plays during the fight with Mia at the start of the game, which is the first moment of explicit danger in the game. And just, it's such a horrifying encounter. Like, her crawling up those stairs is probably the scariest imagery in the whole game.
Yeah, it is. See, stuff like that, it's like, okay, I get what they're doing. I appreciate it. And like, there was actually like a confrontation there, but when you're running away, nope. And busting through walls is a whole next level.
I think that this song has like a really cool use of whispers and groans to like really sort of bring across that Mia is essentially possessed by something. You don't know what, but she seems to be possessed by something. And it definitely makes like the now violent Mia feel like a huge threat.
Great piece. Just, the one part of the game I know.
It's a really cool moment. I'll give them that though. And the second piece on the cutting room floor is The Sad Truth. Once more composed by somebody I guess I gotta go look into for a later episode in the show, Miwako Chinone. This actually plays in a late game cutscene where you actually get an encounter with the real Jack Baker. Like, not the crazy guy, like the guy he was before he was driven mad. And it's just this really sad scene where he's like, look, this isn't us. We weren't like this before. You gotta free us. Please get rid of this thing. And it's just really neat. And this piece perfectly builds into it. Because sadness isn't really what you expect to feel in a Resident Evil game, but especially not pity for one of the main antagonists. Like, congratulations, you made me feel sorry for the guy who tried to drive my car into me. It's such a good scene. It's such a good song.
Once again, I too love the music of Gustavo Santaolalla. It seems like someone else does as well.
So, what will I never forget about Resident Evil 7? Like I said, first Resident Evil game I ever played. I was vaguely aware of other games in the series up to this point, mostly through osmosis from other sources. But I'd never sat down and played one myself. I absolutely loved it. Kind of want to replay it. And I'm really hoping that Village is able to keep up this momentum, or the momentum that the Resident Evil series has had since then, honestly, in general. And also, I would like Jack Baker to be put into a Marvel vs. Capcom game. Because that sounds like a lot of fun.
It's not too much to ask, right? Right?
Yeah, definitely not.
Not like Marvel vs. Capcom 4 is a sure thing.
It sure is definitely happening 100%.
Yeah, boy, that Mia encounter sure is something. That is one way to get you into a game. I do want to get back to Resident Evil 7 eventually, because Resident Evil it's a big old blind spot in my gaming history. And as much as I really enjoyed 2 Remake, for sure, it's like one of those things like, yeah, VR? You have VR. Do you want to try it? You want to try VR? So it's always one of those things that's kind of at the back of my mind, but always good to hear about games like this and bring it to the show.
And also another thing, I guess, that comes to mind for what I'll never forget is that demo was really neat. And I wish more games would do that. Like, I think the demo 100% was inspired by PT. I don't think they can tell me it wasn't all they want, but the idea to put out that demo, that was PT, that has PT written all over it.
Sure.
I believe them that the game was not inspired by PT, but putting out that teaser, I think, absolutely was. But just for months after that, every time they added something new to that demo, the internet would just go like, all right, what hints are in there now? Like, what secrets can we find? And there was an insane amount of secrets to be found in that demo. And I just think it's really neat. And I wish more companies would embrace that kind of thing.
Great games to talk about this week. I mean, I think you're perfect for October here. Talking about games with twisted murder. They came out in 2017. But aside from that, Danganronpa V3 and Resident Evil 7 could not be further apart, especially with their soundtracks. Oh my goodness. But that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at The Dobaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel. But it's that MP3 podcast version that you want, hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's where Joe's other podcast, Masterpieces, is hosted. And you can find those podcasts on services all around the globe, wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, where we have the podcast feed and its bonus tracks on Spotify, but we also have the Spotify playlist. When we talk about a song from a video game on this show and it's on Spotify, it's getting added to that playlist. Joe, what's being added this week?
Both of these soundtracks are actually on Spotify, so yeah, this is the second week in a row, and I'm pretty sure next week we also have a double.
Whoa, look at us adding things to that big ol' Spotify playlist. When you're done listening to all of that, you can find us on social media at Soundchat OST. Leave feedback for the show, how we're doing, suggestions for games that you'd like us to cover, and then also check out some bonus tracks on your podcast feed. Again, last week we had the spoiler warning for Her Story, and we're also working on Best of 2017. So I got a feeling we're going to mention both of these games in the Best of 2017, but will they make the cut, or will they be honorable mentions? Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Joe Ramersa.
I will be talking about Hudson Mohawk. All right, Joe, let's play us out.
I mean, when Little V. Mills does an epic metal cover of a song like Go Tell Aunt Rhody, what else am I supposed to use?
You gotta use it. Enough said. It's Lil V. Mills. Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.